After watching Marco Sturm's introductory press conference as head coach of the Boston Bruins, one thing is clear. He is the right man for the job right now.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And on today's episode, we are diving into three big takeaways from the introductory press conference for Marco Sturm that was held on Tuesday. We're going to discuss why the Bruins hired Sturm, what set him apart in the coaching search. Then we're going to discuss how he plans to lead and structure the team on and off the ice. And then we'll touch on what Don Sweeney revealed about offseason priorities, including the draft, free agency, and the Bruins' evolving identity. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. That includes X, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, even TikTok. You can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I have been covering this team and the NHL at large for various outlets for about 20 years, including 5 as a full-time news editor at thescore.com. So yesterday, a lot of us tuned into Marco Sturm's introductory press conference, and I was very impressed by his clarity, his structure, developmental mindset, and a deep understanding of what it means to wear the Spoked B. Let's back up a touch, though. The Bruins weren't just looking for a new bench boss. They were making a statement about resetting the culture and direction of this team after one of the most awkward off seasons in recent memory and a very down season. Just a couple of months ago, the Bruins front office delivered what many called a combative, awkward, kind of ugly press conference. And Don Sweeney famously told the Boston Globe's Tara Sullivan that, I'll let you know when someone doesn't want to interview with us. And this tension highlighted a bit of a disconnect between the front office and external perception. And it set the stage for this more reflective and solution-focused Sturm announcement. Now, Don Sweeney did disclose that 14 candidates were interviewed for the head coach job. We don't know if anybody said after the interview process that they didn't want to take the job, but Don Sweeney did admit that many interviewees were pretty brutally honest about what was wrong with the Bruins. Sweeney said, quote, "You have to be open to all of it. The Bruins didn't execute at the management, coaching, or player level, and some coaching candidates came in, gave their honest opinion, and the outside perspective that others have had of the Bruins organization over the years was pretty helpful for him in terms of, okay, where does this team need to be? Where are we? An honest assessment and what we need in order to move forward." And that's kind of why Marco Sturm stood out. He's development first mindset, bringing structure, leadership values, and emotional intelligence. And he too had the courage to call out what the Bruins had gotten away from. Sweeney said Marco went through some of the things he felt the Bruins had done well, but also the things the Bruins had gotten away from and where the league is heading. And there was a heavy emphasis on player development, minor league integration, and a better prospect pipeline. And this comes, of course, from Marco Sturm being with the Los Angeles Kings organization and helping develop some of their prospects to graduate from the Ontario Reign and go to the Kings. I also wanted to point out, and this had been reported before, but Sturm was on the West Coast while his family was out here east. So he really sacrificed a lot in order to learn what it takes to be a coach, to hone that craft. And he said when he saw Don Sweeney's name on his phone, it was special. It means more. It's not just about him being a former player here. It's not just about his family living in Boston. It's also about fit. And this was the right fit at the right time. He even said, it's a good thing for him, selfishly, that the Bruins weren't very good last season because it opened up this opportunity for him. He also called out Patrice Bergeron and thanked him for his support. Bergeron actually attended the presser, and Sturm noted how much that meant and how important it is to rebuild the leadership core, which we'll touch on in a little bit. Yes, Sturm is a former player, and he was in Boston for some very pivotal years for this team. He joked that the Joe Thornton trade that brought him to Boston was not his fault. Obviously, that was a very unpopular move at the time, including from myself. That was the first time that I felt the need to sit down and write about the Boston Bruins in blog form, and been covering this team like that ever since. Did not like that trade, but it brought Sturm to Boston at a very pivotal time where there were some young players being integrated into the lineup and guys that went on to be core players for this team, like a Patrice Bergeron, a David Krejci, Brad Marchand, etc. And Sturm was a veteran leader at that time who kind of took some of these guys under his wing and helped to build that culture that was set by Zdeno Chara, who was named as captain during that time, and then eventually by Patrice Bergeron, who took over that mantle. So Sturm, like the 13 other candidates, was very honest about where the Bruins are and where they need to go. That emphasis on player development and minor league integration was huge. His ties to the city, his family living here, kind of a bonus as well. But from what Sturm had to say about where he wants this team to go, again, it's very clear that he is the guy for this job. Now that he's officially in charge, what kind of team does he want to build? We'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. Are you looking for a snack that is both nutritious and delicious? Well, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. It's also a good snack to sneak to your kids when they're playing video games so they don't know that they're snacking healthy and getting the protein that they need. But if you love the feeling of cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are also a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking today with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. It's free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not already. So Marco Sturm laid out his philosophy in detail during yesterday's press conference. It's not a blank slate per se, but more of a reset. And his goal is to restore the Bruins' internal heartbeat while evolving their offensive approach. And Marco Sturm said he's not just a system coach, he's a culture builder. He emphasized rekindling the Bruins' identity through leadership from within, competitiveness, and a direct but supportive coaching style. And he talked about the heartbeat philosophy. He believes the culture begins on the ice, in practice, in the locker room, with how players compete daily and interact with one another. He said the heartbeat has to come from the guys inside. He's already talked to veteran players on the team, probably your David Pastrnaks, Charlie McAvoys, Jeremy Swaymans, and he said he can tell they learned from Patrice Bergeron and Zdeno Chara that leadership must be earned and sustained through accountability. Now, his coaching style and expectations, largely inspired by Claude Julien, who took over when he was here in Boston, Daryl Sutter, who he helped in Los Angeles. Both are known for their honesty and their discipline. They'll treat players differently based on personality and experience, and he wants players to understand expectations clearly. No confusion, no excuses. He said there will be no gray areas. His messaging will be very clear. He also said he hates losing. He's very competitive on and off the ice. Now, in terms of system identity, his goal is to play fast and without the puck, emphasize puck possession, reduce turnovers, and improve entries. He's going to adjust systems to suit personnel, not force a square peg into a round hole. He already has a system in his head, and he's going to wait to see what players he has before finalizing it. Obviously, the Bruins are a roster in flux. There will be some roster turnover, new additions. We'll discuss that a bit later on in the podcast. But when it comes to how he wants to approach things, a lot of it will be roster dependent. And Sweeney was asked, like, is he going to build the roster based on Sturm coming in, or was Sturm brought in to help this current roster? And it's kind of a bit of both. The reality is they're going to adapt here on the fly. Now, one of the big problems is the power play, which dipped from top 10 to 28th last year, despite adding Elias Lindholm to the mix. Zone entries, predictability were major issues. Sweeney said they had 4 of 5 players return and added Lindholm, but their power play still dropped. And he admitted that's on the Bruins. Sturm said they have to be more committed, connected, play to their strengths. When it comes to the coaching staff, they are going to be searching for a power play focused assistant who fits the culture. Nobody screams that to me more than Mark Savard in Toronto. I don't know if the Leafs would have an appetite to allow him to move on, but when it comes to similar to Sturm, right? Former Bruin who's moved on and learned his craft at the junior level, NHL assistant level. And if anybody knows how to run a power play, it is Mark Savard. That would be a fantastic hire. Again, I don't know if he'd be released from the Leafs or if he'd want to come, but that would be an ideal hire for sure. Now, Joe Sacco, of course, is out. He was thanked for his long service with the Bruins. He dates back to those Julien days as well. He's now an assistant with the New York Rangers. For better or worse, Chris Kelly's sticking around. Jay Leach is sticking around, as is Bob Essensa. You could really ask whether or not it's worth bringing Kelly and Leach back. And the reality is you have to kind of debate the merits of continuity, some continuity versus starting all over. Kelly's been around for a while. Leach down in Providence, went to Seattle, came back. He was one of the reported finalists for the head coach job. We'll see how they fit in, and if it is just kind of more of the same from this team, and whether or not Sturm eventually would prefer to have his own assistants come in. He will have some say, obviously, in the power play focused assistant who fits the culture, and hopefully that person can come in and really help with this area of the game, because it was pretty poor last year. Sturm said it has to be the right fit for him and for the team. The end of the day, his coaching style is inspired by Julian and Sutter, so that's tough, clear, direct. Some guys need a push, he said. Others need patience. It's about knowing the difference. He hates losing. He said his messaging is always going to be very clear. And while he has some ideas about the system that he wants to implement, he knows it's going to be very structured, very clear. He wants to play fast with and without the puck, focus on clean exits, puck possession, and offensive pressure, with an emphasis on zone entries, an offensive mindset, and, of course, having to adjust systems to fit the personnel, which is all very encouraging sounding. Don Sweeney said this team needs to evolve offensively, and that's something that could happen with internal promotions or via trade or with the abundance of cap space that they have to spend this summer. They need to make the right moves, the smart moves. Last summer, they prioritized Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov. Those are guys who were brought in to shore up the defensive identity of this team. And despite the ups and downs of Lindholm's first season, he was one of the better defensive centers in the NHL this season. Zadorov kind of in and out of the penalty box, struggled to find his place, but he stepped up near the end of the season as well as one of the leaders. These two are now core members of this team moving forward. And Sturm is going to have to adapt around them and also help to incorporate any new additions to the lineup, along with the younger core of Swayman, Pastrnak, and Charlie McAvoy. Swayman, again, is going to be needed to step up, and I think Sturm's structure and, of course, the return of Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm from injury will really help to that end. So that's kind of where he's going in terms of structure, systems, identity. How will this all connect to what's next? The Bruins have a 7th overall draft pick, cap space, a roster that will look different by October. Let's talk about offseason strategy here as the podcast continues. So hiring a new head coach was one of the priorities on Don Sweeney's offseason to-do list. And the initial vibes are, I wouldn't say off the charts, but pretty high here. Very positive after hearing Marco Sturm talk about his experience, his passion for the game, his dedication to becoming a new head coach, sacrificing family time over the years, and learning from his previous time in Boston. Haven't even mentioned his work with Germany yet, but building that program from the ground up and earning a silver medal without the benefit of a Leon Draisaitl in the lineup. Yes, it wasn't a best-on-best tournament, but still beat some very formidable countries along the way to that silver medal. And now he is coming into Boston and looking to succeed at his first NHL head coaching job. And this is not just a nostalgic retread. It is a pretty bold move forward with the benefit of some history here to lean on. And he said he's going to be picking the brain of Zdeno Chara, Patrice Bergeron, who are still around. And interesting that he didn't mention Brad Marchand. I don't think he came up at all during yesterday's press conference. Perhaps a bit too soon, too fresh for him to be mentioned here in terms of him fighting for a Stanley Cup. He didn't know him as well, I don't think. Bergeron, of course, was here before. Anyways, the Bruins right now are in a bit of a rare spot. They have draft capital, cap space, a coach ready to maximize both veterans and youth. And Don Sweeney gave a few subtle but important insights into what is coming. The Bruins hold the 7th overall pick. It's their first top 10 pick in 14 years. They also have 2 second-rounders this year and 2 first-rounders next year. So the Bruins are opening to using those picks to either select the best available player or make a win-now trade. Sweeney said they're in a unique possibility this year, or a unique position. They'll use their draft capital to improve their hockey club in any capacity possible, and that includes potentially trading that pick. And I discussed, everydayers will remember, the possibility of flipping the 7th overall pick in exchange for a player like Marco Rossi, who is seemingly available in Minnesota. Rossi is the kind of player you want to acquire with the 7th overall pick, but who has already been developed and is there now. You don't have to wait 3, 4, 5 years for the 7th overall pick to make a contribution. You could flip that pick for a guy who is able to contribute right now. This is a top 6 center in the NHL, coming off a 60-point season. So he didn't really take that off the table, which I thought was pretty interesting. The Bruins are expected to have about $20+ million in cap space. After contract shakeout, you need to take care of Mason Lohrei and Morgan Geekie and perhaps some of your other unrestricted free agents. But Sweeney dropped clear hints that this roster is going to change. He said we're not the same team we were, and we're not going to be by the time the season opens. So whether that means cutting ties with Johnny Beecher or Jacob Lauko or Parker Witherspoon, you'd like to see them keep Marat Husnudinov. There's some other RFAs that they need to sign, but they're going to have some clear cap space that they'll be able to use in pretty meaningful ways here this offseason. Obviously, you have Geekie, Lauko, Beecher, and Husnudinov as RFAs, Cole Koepke as a UFA up front, and then Parker Witherspoon, Henry Jokiharju as UFAs on the blue line, Mason Lohrei, an RFA, Geekie, Lohrei, the clear priorities. Down on the farm, Riley Tufte, Vinny Lettieri, UFAs, Oliver Wahlstrom, John Farinacci, Trevor Kuntar, Georgi Merkulov, Jackson Nelson, as well as the 2 goalies, Michael DiPietro, Brandon Bussi, as UFAs. So whether it be by trade, allowing guys to walk, or free agency, it's going to be a much different roster coming up next season. He's open to adding top 6 scoring winger or center, a special teams specialist, and making a hockey trade using picks and prospects. When it comes to the youth movement, Sturm and Sweeney both emphasized development and integration of prospects, and Sturm will challenge players but support them along the way. Matt Poitras and Fraser Minton were directly mentioned. Fabian Lysell, Marat Husnudinov were kind of implied. Don Sweeney said Marco knows the path. He's coached players at every level, and he knows how to challenge them. Sturm added he'll support them and push them, but they have to jump on the wagon. Player development was a huge part of the conversation during the interview process. It's about timing, making sure they're connected with the NHL and AHL programs. I think coming up, I'm going to have to do a podcast on the possibility of Fabian Lysell being traded this summer. Patra, Minton were specifically mentioned as guys to develop and integrate. Lysell, not so much. When you're talking about making a swing in a trade, perhaps a guy like Lysell might be better suited for another team, and they use him as an asset in trying to improve the current roster. The final thing was that the captaincy is, of course, up for grabs, and Sturm and whoever's part of the leadership group will define a new era of internal accountability. And again, Sturm referenced Zdeno Chara's work in terms of building the culture, how Patrice Bergeron carried that torch. Now you have guys like David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy who are ready to take up that mantle. I still expect it will be Pastrnak who will be the next captain of the Boston Bruins. But it's going to be a firm leadership group. I could see like Pastrnak with McAvoy, Zadorov, Lindholm, maybe Hampus as well, kind of rotating the A's. But Pastrnak, I fully expect to be the next captain of this team. Look, to sum it all up, the Bruins didn't just name a new head coach. They're charting a new course here. Yes, Sturm has ties to the organization, which some see as, I don't want to say lazy, but an easy choice. But Marco Sturm, on his own merits, warrants an NHL head coaching job. And I'm very excited to see what he's able to do with this evolving roster. He brings structure, passion, a clear vision for what this team can be again. He's been through a down period with this team right before they hit new heights. And with a renewed focus on player development, a reestablished culture, and a front office that's finally open to reflection and change, Boston's entering a new era, one that's built on clarity, competitiveness, and cohesion. And going back to the beginning, can't be understated how different the tone was in this press conference compared to the one a couple months ago. Sweeney seemed very defensive, as did Cam Neely. In this one, I talked about previously the kind of need for those fresh eyes. And there were some head coaching candidates who were very honest about where this team is and where it should be. Sturm has the ability to connect the dots between where the team was and where it got to, and then now again where this team is and where it needs to be once again. The road ahead won't be easy, but it finally feels like the Bruins have a real plan in place and the right head coach to lead them through it. Don Sweeney still has a lot of heavy lifting to do in order to regain trust from this fan base. And that's going to come via the draft, whether or not he makes a trade prior to that, and of course, in free agency. So the next few weeks are going to be massive for this club. The head coach, I'm calling a hit so far. You can check that off. Great hire so far by Don Sweeney. Still draft, free agency, potential trades to come, and we'll be able to give a final stamp of approval on this team come training camp and when we see who's actually going to be competing for this roster. For now, I'm very happy with the hiring of Sturm, and I'm excited to continue to look ahead at what he is going to do for this franchise as the 30th head coach of the Boston Bruins. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today, my friends. For your next listen, check out Locked On NHL Game Night, where they're covering every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. You can find it on the Locked On NHL feed on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. subscribe here as well so that you never miss a thing. And also take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here on a new episode tomorrow of Locked On Boston Bruins, your favorite team every single day. Where are my headphones?